We're finishing today's show with another update in the Alex Murdaugh saga. A federal judge granted disgraced South Carolina attorney and convicted murderer Alex Murdaugh an extension of time to fight an insurance fraud lawsuit involving his late housekeeper's family. 57-year-old Gloria Satterfield died in 2018 after an alleged trip and fall accident at the Murdaugh's Moselle property. Despite Satterfield's death initially being classified as natural, a local coroner claimed her injuries were inconsistent with a trip and fall accident. Since 2021, Satterfield's death has been under criminal investigation by the South Carolina Law Enforcement Division, or SLED. Fast forward to the present day, and Murdaugh is serving life in prison at South Carolina's McCormick Correctional Institution for the murders of his wife Maggie and son Paul. Now, while behind bars, Murdaugh is fighting a federal lawsuit against an insurance company, accusing him and his former friend of pocketing over $4 million in insurance settlements that were aimed for Satterfield's children. In Murdaugh's filing, he argues that the facility has restrictive prison conditions that, quote, creates logistical complications for him in this litigation. His team has until May 1st to respond to the lawsuit. Now, to give you a little bit more context to this, let's rewind back to Murdaugh's trial when Satterfield's son was questioned about this settlement money.
Did he ever tell you about a $505,000 settlement that already had occurred?
No.
Did the defendant ever tell you that he also had a $5 million umbrella policy?
No.
Did he ever tell you that there had been a recovery against that?
No.
Did he ever tell you that there had been a recovery for $3.8 million against that?
No.
Did he ever pay you one penny of $3.8 million?
No.
So, Terry, extensions are fairly common in civil cases, but do you agree with the judge's decision to grant this particular extension for this reason?
Well, I didn't think it should be granted. First of all, you're right, they are generally granted, especially if it's only for the first time. But here, we do know that Gloria Satterfield died in 2018. It's now 5 years later, and these children needed that money. They have a brother who is not able to testify. He's disabled. You know, they've been waiting for a long time. So I definitely think that time is of the essence, and that justice denied is not what should happen here. So I hope that this is the one and only extension. The only good news is that it was a short extension, and perhaps the judge will allow it to go forward from here.
Well, Brian, when we talk about limitations, what limitations is Alex Murdaugh facing when he's preparing for a trial in prison?
Well, Jesse, it's really about time and resources, and oftentimes in prison you don't have much of either. And so the inability to just sit down on a laptop and read discovery for 3-4 hours and maybe the middle of the day, Alex may not be able to do that because he's in prison.
Welcome back, everybody. A Minnesota mother of two has been missing since the end of March, and her family is pleading for people to come forward with information. Here's what we know so far. 26-year-old Madeline Kingsbury dropped her two kids off at daycare with their father, Adam Fravel, at around 8 a.m. on March 31st. Then at 8:15 a.m., Kingsbury's van returned back to the home she shared with Fravel in the city of Winona. At 10 a.m., her van departed her home and returned back to the residence at 1:30 p.m. As for Fravel, he told police that he left their home at 10 a.m. and when he returned, Kingsbury's phone, wallet, jacket were all still inside, but Kingsbury was nowhere to be found. This week, Kingsbury's sister Megan spoke with Law&Crime about the mother's disappearance and the evidence currently at play.
She'd never gone off on her own. I've never been without communication with her, even for a day, for years. You know, and she had plans for the near future and for years into the future as well. You know, she was supposed to come to my house the next day with her daughter. If plans change in any type of way, I know like immediately from her. She had plans and things that she wanted to do in the future, so she wouldn't have just left. We're trying to piece together, you know, where her car was in between the time that it left her home and when it returned. So I think it's between like 10 and 1 on that day of March 31st. So, yeah, and it's not clear who was driving the vehicle. You know, there is, as far as I know, some surveillance video of the van at a gas station in Rushford, Minnesota, just kind of driving by, but you can't see who is driving it. So So yeah, and any footage that they are able to get that has even a glimpse of the van would be extremely helpful. And I know there's people out there that don't like dealing with law enforcement. There are ways to give tips anonymously. No one has to know who you are. So if that's you and you know something, I would take advantage of that. You know, there's no harm in helping here, essentially. So we just ask that if anyone knows anything, that they please just come forward with that information.
Kingsbury's sister also shared details about Madeline's plan to live separately from Fravel. The two had ended their relationship but wanted to live close to each other for co-parenting purposes since Fravel didn't have primary custody of their two kids. According to court documents, social workers and police visited Fravel on April 4th to take the children, and the father was reportedly non-cooperative in the process. You see, at one point, Fravel allegedly took the younger of the two children back into their home and locked the door, despite being told that Winona County was legally responsible for the kids. Fravel has denied any involvement in Kingsbury's disappearance, and no suspects have been publicly identified by authorities. The young mother's disappearance is still considered involuntary and suspicious. Brian, I'll start with you. Police aren't giving the public a lot of information here, similar to what we kind of saw in the Brian Kohberger case. You think police are being tight-lipped for the same reason?
Absolutely, Jesse. I think that there are enough pieces here, similar to like you mentioned in the Kohberger case. We have a vehicle, we have eyes out there. The family's already put a $50,000 reward for any information. And from what I understand, many tips are coming through. I think we should probably learn from the Kohberger case and maybe take a step back, allow law enforcement to do their job and see where the information leads. And hopefully it leads to the arrest of an individual. And I know we don't often see people recovered in situations like this, but I think we should still keep some hope for that as well.
Yeah, no, listen, we are all hoping and praying for the safe return of Madeline Kingsbury. That would be the best result here. Terry, law enforcement, as we've been talking about, they haven't named a suspect, but you think they've obtained search warrants for Adam Fravel's computer, maybe his phone records?
Well, if they haven't, Jesse, I think that they should. Look, they need probable cause to obtain a search warrant. That just means they have to have a reasonable suspicion that a crime occurred at that location. Here, that is supported by the facts. This is the ex-husband. He lived there. He took the kids. He has computers there. He has phones there. And I think if they go through that, they'll see what the searches were perhaps. Maybe he did Google how to hide a body. We don't know for a fact, but maybe he did use his phone. They can look at locations. So I think they're going to do what they do in most investigations, is start from the inside and go out. And the inside is definitely the person who was closest to her, and that would be her ex. So I hope that they do that. I hope that they get clues from the public and that they are able to determine what happened to her. And hopefully she'll come back and she'll be alive and well.
And Brian, I'll turn to you real quick on this. When we spoke with Megan, she wasn't clear about how much is being shared with her by law enforcement. If you're law enforcement, how much do you share details of the investigation with the family?
I think you've got to be respectful to the family because they are hurting and they're needing information, but you also don't want, for lack of a better phrase, too many chefs in the kitchen. If you're giving out information in terms of your leads, who you're looking into, who you're trying to speak with, again, the Brian Kohberger case where so many people are like, look here, look there, look everywhere. You want to kind of streamline this, but still be courteous and understanding of the family's needs while continuing your investigation.
It's one of these things in these cases, but it's just be patient. And unfortunately, that's what we have to do. Be patient. The answers will eventually come one way or another, and we're going to follow it here on Law and Crime.